Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending our regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen's meeting tonight, Thursday, September 17th, 2020. I ask that we please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Okay. First on our agenda would be public comment, I believe. Do we have anyone for public comment?
If anyone wishes to make a public comment, please, in the chat box, indicate comment and your name. And Mr. Larson, right now, there are no indications of public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you very, very much. Next, good to know. Andy, do we have anyone for any kind of business spotlight or public service announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did reach out to Eversource by request of the Board of Selectmen at the last meeting. Our two representatives weren't able to make it tonight, but they've committed to the next Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Moving along. Agenda, please.
Yes, next is item number 5, which would be appointments and resignations. A is Conservation Commission.
Okay, and it looks like we've received 3 letters. Well, actually, we have
It's
3
been
letters.
changed.
We have 3 places, right?
Well, it's kind of been changed a little bit because we have not received the resignation letter from the person that has verbally let us know he's going to step down. So underneath the Conservation Commission appointments under A, letters have been received from the following individuals expressing interest in being appointed to the Conservation Commission: Joanna Chester and Jasmine, I'm not even going to attempt to say that, Orgic, and then Daniel Sergman. So Donna had changed the motions, and I think she can put them up on the screen for you guys to read, because we haven't received that actual written resignation.
Okay, I mean, everybody's, their resumes are stellar.
Yes. No, I agree, and I do see Joanna's on the meeting here with us tonight. I don't know if anybody else is. I haven't looked. I just see her.
We have Daniel Theramet. I see is on.
Yep.
Tom Lodo, the chairman, is also here. He may have some comments to make.
This is actually Ashley Lodo, Tom Lodo's daughter. He was at a work function and he has not gotten back yet. He was planning to be back for 7:20, but he hasn't gotten back yet. So I'm not sure what exactly he had planned to say, but
I thought it was something about you were going to buy us all dinner. No.
No. I work at the library, so I can't buy anybody dinner.
So I can jump in for what I know.
Please.
Joanne Chester is very qualified. I talked to Tom Lodo. He recommends the people that are being proposed here tonight. I also had a conversation with Michael Leary and Steve Knopf, and everybody involved feels that these would be appropriate to appoint these people to the commission at this time.
Okay, but without that resignation, can we appoint them all?
Donna changed it, so we can.
Okay, perfect. Well, without further ado, I would the Hebron Board of Selectmen appoint the following as regular members to the Hebron Conservation Commission for the term indicated. We have Joanna Chester. If we go right down the line, that would be December 2022. Jasmine Ockerick, which would be December 2023. And then we move the Hebron Board of Selectmen, appoint the following as an alternate member to the Hebron Conservation Commission for a term to expire in December 2021, which would be Daniel Saramet. So making the motion, any discussion from anyone? Hearing no discussion, all in favor by saying aye. John, you're muted.
Gotcha. Aye, John Collins, aye.
Thank you. Is Mark with us tonight?
I don't think Mark, Mark's at a training up in New Hampshire.
Oh,
so I don't
okay.
Yep.
He's gonna try to join us whenever he gets out of that.
Okay, Gail,
Gail Richmond, aye.
Pete,
Peter Casper, aye.
and myself, aye. Now, we did have these people in attendance. Would it be possible that if we could just hear a little bit from them, maybe a minute or a couple of minutes, would they be willing to speak? Joanna, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, sure. I'm a professional geologist and a licensed professional. I was born in Connecticut. I worked for, I guess, almost 30 years in environmental consulting. I've done a few projects that involve wetland and hydrogeology. I got a master's degree from the University of Connecticut in 1992 and my PG license from the state of New Hampshire. Do you have any specific questions?
No, I just, just a little bit about you. Just a little bit
I
about.
live in Hebron. I have kids in
Okay.
the school system. And I do volunteer for other things such as Girl Scouts and Mastering Motherhood, which have all taken a strange turn. And actually volunteer for this position a while, but I really didn't really have this because my kids were younger. Now that I find out, so I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very, very much. Did any of the other members want to ask anything?
You seem eminently qualified. So welcome aboard.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you. Daniel? You're on mute. Yeah.
Yes, hello. Thanks for hearing from me. I had an interest in just becoming more involved in town business, town functions. This seemed like a good fit for me based on my experience. I went to the University of Connecticut, have a bachelor's and master's in environmental engineering, and I've been working in the environmental investigation remediation field for about 13 years now. Experience in environmental remediation, civil site work, have done several projects in local, state, and federal wetlands, and been done presentations for other town wetlands boards. So,
Beautiful. Thank you. Anybody, any questions or? Okay.
Again,
And do we have,
this is John.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Daniel, you sound very qualified, and thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have the third person on?
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you guys. My name is Yasmin Okujic. Last name is very hard to pronounce. I was originally from Bosnia, moved to the United States around 1999. So I've been here for roughly 20 years. Recently, I moved to Hebron about 2 years ago. Moved from West Hartford, mostly for the nature side of things that Hebron has to offer. I'm a project manager for construction management. I only do commercial construction. Currently, I'm doing a out of the ground building in Waterbury. Also involved with remediation in the city of Waterbury. I have been in the industry for roughly seven years. I've done work all over Connecticut, mostly higher education, museums. Right now I'm getting into corporate real estate stuff too. But done some out of the ground buildings that required a lot of coordination with wetlands commissions and have some experience in that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank all of you. It always amazes me the quality of people that we get to step up and assist our town in making, so many important decisions that affect not only our lives today, but, our environment and our lives, for, probably years after I'm long gone. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin.
Okay, moving on. Thank you, gentlemen, ladies.
Okay, so next, Mr. Chairman, would be the town manager's report unless you want to put that
No.
off.
No, please, no.
Okay. So as you well know, we've been working on this bonding package. We finally have it finalized. It was quite a bit of an undertaking, but I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We have the closing set for September 22nd. We've gotten everything we've needed. We've dropped the paperwork off in Hartford earlier this week, so I think we're all set to go. So cross your fingers, and that'll be off our plates, and then we'll be going out to bid. I've been working with the fire department, and I do have a draft of the new EMT proposals. I just got it today to see what that looks like, to see if we're going to be moving forward with putting on some more people that was budgeted for the response for the ambulance calls. So that was done in conjunction with the chief officers in the fire department, so we'll be working on that. Okay, Ram Campus project, they had the walkthrough on Wednesday. We have a punch list that's pretty much completed, other than the crosswalk and the beacons, and a couple other small change orders. We're 99.9% sure that's going to be coming in within budget, especially underneath the contingency that we allotted. So we're working and crunching the numbers for Ram's meeting on Monday. Hopefully we have that ready for them. The energy upgrade project is going very well. They're 90% done at the library. They're working at Public Works. They're working at Parks, and they're going to be working at the town hall with the lighting upgrades. Also, the HVAC upgrades are also underway at Douglas Library and are scheduled to be completed by mid-October. So that was a big project, long awaited, so that's moving forward. The police have been working with the police in the schools. That's been very busy. Reopening of the schools. We had most of our police department rank and file dispatch there. That is now, the plans have been tweaked, and we've been able to get a couple of those gentlemen back. So right now they're covering Gilly Hill School with the resource officer and still presently requesting one of our officers in the morning at Hebron. So we're going to continue to do that for a little while until it gets squared away. And then I'm working with the fire chief as well for a job description for the new fire chief. And there might be some different matrix that we want to talk about with some possible personnel changes coming up in the next fiscal year. So I want to make sure we take everything into consideration that'll clearly be done through the Board of Selectmen and the fire department. So starting to work on that with the chief.
Are we going to be doing any kind of a, like a workshop on that one, or?
We're in talking with the chief and possibly some of the proposals that we're going to show you. We might have something where it's going to be a combined position where it still wouldn't be a full-time chief at this point, but we're going to make it possibly a full-time position with possibly Randy mentioning in the near future that he's going to be leaving. So we want to look at a couple different options. It'll be just the chief, myself, and you guys at first.
Okay. Okay.
That makes sense. And then I didn't know if you wanted to get into the correspondence just quickly. I know a resident, Mr. John Barron, had sent a letter to the Board of Selectmen, myself, and Michael Leary. We did respond to his first letter, and as soon as he had sent his first letter, we were in contact with SHPO, which is the state historic people. And since he's raised his concern, they're aware of it, and we're working with them. We're also going to start to work on a grant through them, see if we can receive that. And what that grant would do would give us money to identify any historic areas or properties within the town of Hebron. So it's well noted and in a document. So as we move forward, there won't be any interruptions. But once again, I know the project was listed as shovel ready, and the reason we claim that status is when they did the RAM campus improvements, we had that project pay for a design of the sidewalk that goes all the way up to Ridge Road. And that sidewalk is to remain within the state DOT right of way. So we were never going to be taking any properties with at least that draft design. So I just want to make sure that's clear. We weren't looking to disrupt anything even prior to receiving the letter. But now that we received it, we took it very seriously. We thank Mr. Barron for pointing that out, and we're going to take that under advisement and work with the state on how we move forward with that project.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very, very much.
Good job.
And that's all I had for the town manager's report.
Okay. And I guess we're in old business.
Yes, old business would be update on the COVID-19 long-term recovery in the town department and school reentry reopenings. That's pretty much going as planned. The only new thing that came out is the new governor's order where it gives the municipalities the ability to invoke fines for masks or gatherings that aren't following the guidelines. I immediately met with Steve Knopf, who we appointed the person under myself, the town manager, and I sent that to the Chatham Health District, and we're not looking to impose any types of fines. We haven't done that. We haven't really had any businesses that aren't complying. So anything we've done was through educational efforts, and it seems to be working. So I put the question to the Chatham Health District. It's on the next agenda for next week that we come up with something that's uniformed for every member of the district before we even think about implying any type of penalties or fines. There has to be a structure to that.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
And then we roll right into the Hebron is open for business task force. And I know Peter's been waiting.
It's like the best part of the meeting, you know?
There you go.
Continues to, we're just moving forward. It continues to go well. We have some challenges, engaging as much of the public as we would like. And we think some of that is due to Obviously school and some of the COVID issues, some of the distractions. So we're sort of reinvigorating some efforts there. Donna had a meeting with the folks from Andover, so an initial meeting, as I mentioned earlier, our last meeting, there was interest in from them in terms of what they could do, what we could do to help them initiate something similar. So that those discussions are continuing. And we have, again, as a reminder, we've launched the scavenger hunt and we're preparing to launch our bingo. So we're on schedule with the events. Our Facebook representation continues to grow. And next week, I had mentioned that the school was very interested, the RAM school and the business and DECA and their honor society was very interested in engaging RAM students to help us further this project. And I was asked for a couple of weeks from Mr. Landry, Tim Landry, our main contact there, to let the first couple of weeks of school go by and sort of see what that brings. And we're at that point now, and again, hearing some good things about that transition. And so I will be following up with him next week. And so hopefully at our next meeting, I'll be able to report at least the next steps in the engagement of the RAM business community and helping us take this even one step further. So all in all, things continue to go very well. And Donna, again, and the help of Andy, we've got strong support and a good task force. So far, so good. Thank you.
Thank you. You're on mute.
Thank you, Dan. So next would be, unless there's any other old business, we go into new business.
Okay.
First item that was on the listed on the new business was on that race and equity and inclusion. And I had talked to John earlier, maybe we should have left that under old business because it was brought up last meeting, but that's where we placed it.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I be recommended?
Sure.
So, I've been thinking about this for a little while, for the last 2 weeks, actually, before that. A resolution was presented that we said we would consider this meeting, and that racism is a public health issue, which is a resolution that's been passed in a number of Connecticut towns and I think around the country. So I went back and I started thinking about, I think this is a good opportunity for Hebron. But I'm looking for a deeper approach. I guess that's what I'm going to go for. And I've talked to a number of people, a lot of people actually in the last 2 weeks. And I'll just highlight I think the most significant people. The first person I talked with was Leah Rawls, who's the executive director of the NAACP in Willimantic. And she had a lot of good things to say, I think interesting things to say. And I just want to say she is available, and I think her staff and consultants are available for a number of things that could, I think, be helpful for us as we continue this journey. And I want to say that this should be a journey of love. We should proceed with love and patience, because this is a difficult journey for every town. I've talked to a lot of towns and they're going through it, and it's not easy. So I would just say that from my perspective, that's really important. So I looked around and to see where towns are at with this with the issue. And I think the best example that I got was in Glastonbury. And Glastonbury did pass the resolution, but I talked with Lillian Tansky, who is on their town council, who is is a co-leader of their effort, and she had a lot of good things to say. They have formed a commission on racial justice and equity, and they are in the process of naming 9 members to help them guide. And when I get to it, that's the motion I'll be making for Hebron. But we've had a long conversation, and it mirrored what Leah Rawls was saying. that we need to have a conversation amongst the community where it's safe, where it's non-judgmental, where people can come and speak their minds in a safe place, express their feelings, and so that's I think that's important. The final person I talked to was Denise Esslinger, who's the pastor of the Gilead Congregational Church. And she had a lot of good and interesting things to say. And one of the things that she said was in their church, they tried to talk about different controversial issues. And what they ended up doing actually was having a training on how to talk about controversial issues, because it's very difficult, right? So I think this is a great opportunity for us, for Hebron. I think we should go deliberately and with love. And I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. So here's my motion. I hope we can discuss it. It mirrors to some extent the Glastonbury motion, or that what they're doing, but it's a little bit different. So my motion is that we, the Board of Selectmen, form a steering committee on racial justice and equity, composed of up to 9 members, and that it will include council members and residents, and the purpose of which is, number 1, to conduct a survey on racism and experiences of Hebron residents. 2, that it have a training on how to speak about difficult subjects. 3, set up a community conversation with residents. 4, make recommendations for action to the Board of Selectmen. 5, consider diversity training. And then 6, consider integration of what we learn into We Are Hebron, our leadership academy. Okay, so let me just speak to that, and let me just tell you where I think this would go. We would, number 1, the town manager and the town and members of the Board of Selectmen would look for members of this committee. Hopefully, longstanding members of the town that know the history, people that are interested, various members. I'm looking to Denise, members of faith. I'm looking for. I mean, I don't know, and I should also say, as we go through this, I'm not an expert. I'm looking for ideas. I like Glastonbury's idea because it's they're going through it, and it seems to be going well. I think it's important, again, that we go through this process. And again, it's a very difficult process. And this is what every town is finding, is that there are people with strong opinions on the left, and then we haven't even heard people with strong opinions on the right. And we need to have an inclusive process to hear from everybody. And like I say, in a non-judgmental and a safe environment. I presented this to Leah at the NAACP, and she's supportive of this. Lillian is willing to come and talk to us, and her partner Barbara, who's I think she's the majority leader of the town council. They're leading the effort there about what they've been doing. But again, the idea here is to learn, is to have some ideas, and to, like I say, to go slowly. Now, this committee would also consider resolutions like the one that was suggested last week that I just said, that racism is a public health issue, and other resolutions. That's one thing that Lillian said to me, is that they started with that, and that should have been part of their committee. You know, they shouldn't have just made that resolution, because on its face, it actually fits into what the community actually should determine to be important or not, or other resolutions. So that's my idea. I think it could be a helpful idea. If not, let me know.
Well, I know Peter's done a lot of discussions on this. I just want to say that I've actually talked to a number of Black friends that I've had and known for years, and I was happily surprised when they point blank said that they've not had issues. Literally, they were even curious as to even why it's even being brought up. And some of these people have been here virtually their whole lives. And that was one of the things. And one of them, her daughter married a Black gentleman, nice guy. I've actually broke bread with them. My neighbors who just moved down to Florida for economic purposes. He had a job that they were paying him so much he couldn't resist to go. But at any rate, I'm going to let Peter talk. I would like to see the motion. I really hate voting on a motion that we haven't even seen. But Peter, you want to talk, please?
Oh, sure. And I've been thinking about it. I don't want to, like John, I am by no means an expert. I have interest. Our organization has been involved in diversity and inclusion seminars, workshops, dialogue for years. So it's something that's sort of part of my corporate culture, but I'm an interested citizen. So I was thinking, and I applaud you, John, for taking the time to talk to so many people and come up with a thoughtful and deliberate way to think about it that's potentially sustaining, not reactionary, but an opportunity to build consensus and do it right. And I also want to thank Andy. Andy's done a great job of providing us information. And if I may just sort of highlight some of the things that Andy provided from CCM, because I think there's some good guidance there. And I think of what you're going through, John, or you're talking about, is there a way to want to make sure we incorporate that into this discussion as well, because they are clearly a guiding resource for all municipalities in Connecticut. And if I may, because not everybody, of course, has read what this, as you know, Andy's provided, the board has, but I just want to highlight a couple things. And first is right in line with what you're talking about, John, which is CCM urges, I'm just going to quote some things here. CCM urges you to have long needed, tough conversations and take substantial actions to help make Connecticut's towns and cities the strong example for the nation that they have the potential to be. And a few more things, if I may, Mr. Chair, just for a couple minutes here. I'll try to be brief. America is confronted once again by the disturbing reality that deep systemic racism persists throughout our society and economy from CCM. And I think, John, you made a good point. I was thinking about it, but I wasn't able to sort of put it together until it crystallized when you mentioned Glastonbury, because the resolution, I thought, shouldn't be first. And I'm glad you brought some context to it, because it's really about, from my perspective, that clearly racism runs through everything if it's truly systemic. So you have housing, education, jobs, healthcare, all these things. And racism as a public health crisis, clearly on a national and a state level, it's a lucid argument, no question. But when you make that resolution, inherently then you are accountable for the actions that follow. And right. I read something by Camara Phillips Jones from Moorhead School, and she was talking about a declaration can make a difference, but declaring a crisis also invites accountability. So she says, and 6 months from now, the public can say to that entity, so for us, Hebron, what have you done? Show me what you've done. And so letting a council or an approach sort of inform us, because for me, if we're going to do something, let's do something that we can actually accomplish. And how does it conform to our society? Because our immediate local culture, right? So what do we want to try to accomplish? So maybe for us that resolution ends up focusing around housing as an example. I don't know, but let that committee sort of inform us as to what we think would be most germane to Hebron leadership, because what we decide in effect, because it's a journey, as you mentioned, what we decide in effect is going to be then managed by people long after we're gone from public service, right? So we sort of are setting ourselves on a different trajectory. And so back to CCM just for a couple more minutes, the challenge of this moment invites Connecticut municipal leaders and organizations to engage with their communities on racial equity and to move forward making smart policy decisions that can eliminate racial inequities in all government policies, practices, and procedures. We cannot let this moment pass without moving forward. So here's the part for me which talks about your thoughtful, deliberate comments. CCM is excited to be working with the National League of Cities and its race, equity, and leadership team to determine how best we organize a more intentional strategy. So let's do this intentionally, and let's do this with guidance, right? To strengthen the capacity and knowledge, because again, I don't know a lot about this other than what we all sort of read and absorb in the media and whatnot, of municipal leaders. So to strengthen the capacity and knowledge of municipal leaders across our organizations who are interested in eliminating racial disparities, healing racial tension, and building more equitable communities. And so the idea of that we have a leadership body that we can lean on in addition to the community that you're talking about, John, and how do we bring those two together to take a thoughtful approach moving forward? And from that, we'll be guided to, as you said, probably present resolutions and how do we eliminate bias? How do we sort of start to know what we don't know? Because, right, you think there isn't bias, but inherently, if it's systemic, it's subtle, it's embedded into little things that you don't really quite think about. And so that's kind of what I've been thinking about, but I was really pleasantly, I don't know about surprised, but encouraged by that fundamental guidance that we can draw upon and that we're being asked to. So we're not stepping out of our lane, we're being asked to take a leadership role in terms of in Connecticut as a municipality and as a group. So how do we do that thoughtfully and with purpose? And I like the idea of let the information guide our resolutions, not have our resolutions guide our actions, because then that accountability may be misaligned and we in essence will have missed an opportunity to change sort of the course of our direction. And so those are the things that I've been thinking about. And again, I appreciate the time and energy you put forth as far as you always do to research, even if we don't agree. And in this case, clearly you can hear I agree, but I always appreciate the time that you take to provide an informed decision, an informed opinion, as opposed to just an opinion. So thank you for that. And that's where I stand, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to share some thoughts on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gail? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Gail.
There we go. Okay, now I can talk. I agree that we need to get the information first for the resolution, because I've always been puzzled by the lack of diversity in Hebron. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a very diverse neighborhood. And one of the reasons why we almost did not move into Hebron was that lack of diversity. But we wanted the rural setting, so we ended up here. And it hasn't changed in the years in between. So I'm very much interested in studying it and see what we could do. And Peter, you mentioned housing. Housing, I think, is a place where we very well may have to do a start.
Okay.
Andy, did you want to chime in on this, please?
I think it's a very important issue and nobody's looking to brush us under the carpet. I think it's very important that the Board of Selectmen do their due diligence and act just as that, not get shamed into rushing something in that may not fit the whole community. But let it be known that we're willing to work forward in a positive manner and take this issue very seriously for the town of Hebron and all the residents that live within the town of Hebron. And there was, Mr. Chairman, there was some correspondence regarding this issue. And I know there's some people that are on this meeting that may want to speak to that. So that would be your prerogative if you want to allow that on this agenda item, or if you want to wait till the other public comment. I didn't bring that up under correspondence prior to.
Mr. Chairman, let's have the members speak first, and then that would be a suggestion, because I think it's an
Yes, I
important
agree.
topic.
I agree. As I say, I hate voting on something that I've never read, never seen. I
Okay.
just, would like to have a chance to digest it.
Sure.
Because it was a 5-part thing.
Well-
Conceptually, I think it sounded good. I just like to see what we're passing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
Well,
And it also,
absolutely.
again, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I absolutely. I mean, my thinking has daily changed. So as I speak with people, so I certainly understand that. So I mean, part of this is there's just some ideas that people have come up with, like the idea of a survey. Lillian was talking to me about that today. I think it's a great idea. Then we know exactly, quantitatively, qualitatively, and people will be able to speak their mind. And I think that's the key here, is that people be able to speak without being shamed, right?
Right.
And I mean, that's key here. And I also want to, like I said, I think we should really think about proceeding with, love and the idea that this is an opportunity for this town. I mean, the town is lovely. I've been doing this walking tour, and I can't tell you the number of people that just love, Hebron and the surrounding towns. They love living here, and if we can make it more welcoming to everybody, it will be a benefit to everybody, right? I mean, that's the thing here, is that if we can make it more welcoming, and I've heard that maybe there is a little bit of New England frostiness here. I don't know, but if we can better understand, through this committee, and we don't have to vote on it tonight. That's fine. I mean, in Glastonbury, I should tell you that it's going slow, because as they go, they've identified four areas of action, and each one is monumental. I mean, they're talking about, I think, housing, recreation, policing, and I forget the other one is. But I mean, there could be 10, So I mean, we have to identify what's most important in Hebron in terms of actions. And
that's true. And some of the other things we have to, again, Hebron, unlike other communities, we have no transportation. We have no real job markets here. We've already know that we have a water system that has had issues in the past. When Colebrook opened up, they ended up losing a well, which was, I mean, we've ended up having to do things on the town side to try to, beef up, that water supply. We do have sewers in the center, so we do have some infrastructure, but all of that plays a part of whenever you're doing any kind of potential housing stuff like this. So there's so many facets that need to be investigated and looked at. The questionnaire, again, we would actually probably really need a workshop just to try to figure out what to put into the questionnaire to try to get answers. We don't want to put the questions in there that would tend to make people answer it in any specific way. You're right. This is a major undertaking
Absolutely.
And in my world, I think we should also, of course, this would be more on the state side. We need to go, and I'm saying even back into the 60s and say what worked, what didn't work. Because literally every year, every decade, and I've been around for quite a few decades. There's a couple of people have been around, as long as, but a lot of the same problems still exist. And this is decade after decade after decade. So obviously, some of the things that were done back in the day, if you will, haven't attained the desired results. And is it time to, again, relook at all of this comprehensively? And this is, this goes out, yes, beyond Connecticut. I mean, this is a national thing. I mean, these were set up as national programs, which, obviously have not, from what I would say, met the desired results. I've actually known people that were on welfare that quite literally, they said, thank God that they just had the intestinal fortitude to write it out, because it would have been so easy to just stay on the system. And he now works for Otis Elevator, and she's now an educator. But, got out of school, pregnancy, blah, 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 all the things that can, I can't say go wrong, but things that impede one's progress. But if they hadn't kept an eye on that long-term goal, never would have made it. The system, in their words, was not designed to help. It's almost designed to keep you there. So these are things that go beyond us in our happy little town of Hebron. Yeah, Peter.
Mr. Chair, may I? John, just thinking about your, how moving forward on, because I think Dan's getting into a lot of issues that are real dialogue that would come through in these discussions that you talk about, and the engagement of the community and that kind of thing. And so I'm thinking about Dan's concern about the detail of your motion needing to absorb that, and then thinking maybe I'm just throwing it out, having a conversation. If you thought of, I think well, from my perspective, forming a commission makes a tremendous amount of sense. And that seems to be a clear direction that we're being asked to take by CCM, by our community, by everybody. Okay, I don't think there's any argument there from my perspective. So could you make a motion to, and I'm thinking of, again, the CCM wording that Andy provided, could you make a motion that to form a commission on racial equality? I forgot, I didn't write down, I may have missed it. Racial equality and justice and equality, okay. That, and just as an idea to think about for tonight. And then I think about the CCM wording, and this is a quote, to engage with their communities on racial equity and to move forward, making smart policy decisions that can ensure fairness and eliminate racial inequities in government policies, practices, and procedures. So your motion is to form the commission to accomplish this broad level goal. Now, if the answer is yes, we're moving forward, then the work starts of how many members, how are we going to sort of build on it. But should we consider as a group a motion to at least move forward with the concept of this commission, so we've accomplished something, and then the details, which are outlined in your 5-part motion, maybe could be part of the structuring of that commission after it's simply been established.
Yeah. Would you amend it? And I will, a friendly amendment, and I will accept it.
Or
And then
throw
we can
something
discuss.
else in there too.
Right.
We have to have a community assessment, and we should. John, have you been to any smaller communities? Glastonbury is really suburbia, and we're not. We're semi-rural, semi-suburbia. So our culture and the way life is lived out here is different than in Glastonbury. We need something similar to us in size, in rural character, and the like. Because
Gail,
we're going to get into a lot as we talk about this. It's something that I've always been interested in, and I'm glad to see that the town will be moving forward like this.
So, yeah, so,
A community assessment, that's borrow the pieces from, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but borrow the pieces from similar towns so that it relates to us here in Hebron.
we might be a little bit of pioneers.
To
I mean,
start all
Colchester,
over ourselves, John? Okay, that sounds good.
but I guess why I like Glastonbury is because I grew up in East Glastonbury, about 12 miles from here, and echoing Dan's comment, I have a pretty good history of what happened in Glastonbury and what happened in the 60s, and then Project Concern, and what happened there, the reports of Project Concern, which went into open choice. There are things that are similar to Glastonbury. Glastonbury is very urbanized on the river, but is very rural, much like Hebron, most on the eastern part of it. East Glastonbury is still very rural, right?
Oh, yes.
So, though they have, their police forces, they have like actually 40 full-time police officers. They have 5 times the crime rate that we do, and it's different. But when it comes to, say, demographics, it's somewhat similar.
There are some fundamental similarities, I agree.
Yeah. But what's good about it is that I think there are people there that want to help us, that want to, that we can learn from. And it may be, like I said, I think Peter's right. My resolution is probably too detailed. Just the idea of getting something started and would be helpful. This meeting.
Okay. Peter, or did anybody want to try to make a motion based on the amended, yeah, anybody want to try to make a motion?
I'll try it, and to that friendly amendment, and then John, please, react accordingly. But hopefully the idea is, to John's point, is that if it's worded in a way that everyone's comfortable, it simply begins the process. That's
Right.
it. And that's all we're doing here. And then the detail is what has to get fleshed out in future meetings with guidance from as many sources as we can draw from, learning from Glastonbury, what mistakes do you think you made? Or if you're giving advice, what would you do differently? All those things John talked about. So drawing from those, that advice to begin a thoughtful structure of that commission and all that. So here's my friendly amendment. So I would, and so John, please listen carefully. And I will try to talk slower than I normally do to see if we've captured it without doing too much. So I'll make a motion that we form a commission on racial justice and equality to engage our community on racial equity and to move forward making smart policy decisions that can ensure fairness and eliminate racial inequities in government policies, practices, and procedures.
Okay, I like that. The only thing I changed is the steering committee on racial justice and equity, not equality, is equity.
I'm sorry. Yep, sure. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think that's great. Absolutely. I like the idea of having a steering committee because it's steering us, because that's what we need.
So not a committee, so a steering committee. Okay, so the form a steering committee. Okay, good. Thank you.
No, excellent. Thank you. I accept it.
Okay, Gail, anything?
No, if Peter, the part where you put government and the policies, could you repeat that for me?
Sure. And this, again, I'm drawing from CCM, Gail. These aren't my own words. So
yeah, I read all the CCM
right.
stuff.
So that's why I thought that would be a good correlation, because we're getting some guidance there, and I liked it. So this was to engage our community on, I'll just read the full sentence, engage our communities on racial equity and to move forward making smart policy decisions that can ensure fairness and eliminate racial inequities in government policies, practices, and procedures.
All right, that was the part I wanted to hear.
So to eliminate racial inequities in our basically our town policies, our town practices and our town procedures. Back to the concept of it's systemic, it's things we don't know about yet that we think aren't a problem, but in essence, those, as John talked about, I think last meeting, others as well, those words are important. So there could be words that need to be adjusted to sort of recognize that they might not necessarily align with true, might cause inequities. And so that's why I like that passage. But again, it's just sort of a broad framework to get started. So at some point the whole urging of, I think, our community and organizations like CCM is the goal is to start, the goal is to begin. And we're beginning. And it's a marathon. So we're beginning with a step of recognizing that we need to engage in a dialogue, and we need to be better informed, and we need to think about how it correlates to our community. And from my perspective, most importantly, it needs to align with what we think we can actually accomplish, so we can proudly be held accountable.
And we may find that we're in far, far better shape than we ever thought we were.
Don't know, right? Exactly. We don't know until we engage, we start the process of exploring these details and listening to the community and listening to people that are more informed than we are, and supporting what is a state initiative and clearly a national movement that's continues to be long overdue.
Okay, John?
No, I think that's great. I think that's excellent. And gives us time to think about and go out into the community, ask people who might be interested, who might be good members, and get feedback. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Do we need to hear the motion again?
I don't, but
No, not now. I got it.
Okay. Then hearing the motion, all in favor by signify for saying aye. I'm learning to speak, I believe. John?
John Collins, aye.
Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
You better. You are made the motion.
Oh, no, John made the motion. I just did a friendly amendment. So.
And myself, aye. Okay.
Excellent.
Andy, next, please.
Okay, so you want to stick to the agenda?
I guess so.
Yes. Otherwise, we'll be here all night.
Okay.
So Andy, you're talking about reading that other correspondence?
You can either do it now or it could come up underneath the public comment at the end.
Let's do it under the public comment. I think makes sense. I mean, my opinion, because I think that's what you were getting at, right? Is do we incorporate that here? But I think it makes sense under public comment.
Okay. So without further ado, under item 8B, the Parks and Recreation Department structure. I've been working with Ken Jardin and a few of the members of that committee, or they're actually commission. So the Parks and Recreation Department has been hit hard due to the COVID-19, resulting in most programs being discontinued. The only major program that is continued at this time is PrEP, which is really much just restarted, and that's the before and after school care. So in addition, the director, Rich Calarco, has also announced his retirement effective in early 2021. So I've been working diligently with the supervisors union contract, Ken Jordan, that's the chairman, and a couple other people. So Ken Jordan, the chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission, and other members of the commission will be in attendance to present the commission's proposal as an advisory group to the Board of Selectmen for how to restructure the department. The PowerPoint presentation is attached. So we have Ken here, Mr. Chairman. I think if the Board of Selectmen's okay with it, we can turn it over to Ken and let him know we have a time frame that we have to meet, but you can cut through. He did a pretty good job.
Thank you, Andy. So my name is Ken Jardin. I'm the chair of the Park and Rec Commission. I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen and the town manager for allowing us time to discuss our recommendations this evening for filling the Park and Rec director position. We fully understand the decision is made by the town manager. We're not trying to interfere with that. We're just trying to provide some input and guidance and help. Andy did request input from the Park and Rec Commission, so that's why we're here this evening. Joining me this evening is Eric Lemieux, who's the vice chair, Charles Daniels, John Russo, and Rich Calarco, the Park and Rec director, is also here. Okay, next slide, please. So there's basically three staffing recommendations. The first is funding for the recreation supervisor. For years, we've touted that the rec department was self-funded. Well, that's no longer the case. When there's no revenue coming in, we could not continue that way. So the Park and Rec director, along with the town manager, have worked with the Board of Finance, and this is already done. That's why there's a green check mark. The funding for the recreation supervisor has been moved to the General Fund 1. So we won't be talking about that much this evening. Then you have the Park and Rec director position. We have been working closely with Andy. We've had several meetings. There's two scenarios I'd like to present this evening. They're not that different. Both scenarios provide savings from the current state, and it's mostly about timing. So you're going to see that this evening. And the third bullet, the contract for the turf management and landscaping, that kind of goes hand in hand with the Park and Rec director positioning opening up. Basically, the town would contract with Rich Calarco to help maintain the Ram and Andover turf management contracts as an independent contractor. So, and I'm going to get into more detail on that a little further on. So next slide. So as Andy mentioned, there's very little revenue coming into Fund 4 right now. We are offering prep, but there's only about 1/3 the number of students we typically have. Part of that is because with COVID, we have more restrictions on space. We do have the Ram and Andover turf management contract money coming in. There's some money coming in from the youth groups for baseball and soccer, but that is usually for supplies for fields. And there's starting some virtual fall programs, but we're just starting that up, so that's not very much revenue either. So Rich has taken quite a few steps to reduce the expense side of the Fund 4. I've already mentioned the rec supervisor position being moved out. In addition to that, the rec manager position was not filled for $83,000. The office administrator position is not filled. The Fund 4 park operations position was not filled, and the town is not requesting a Fund 4 contribution this year. So all of that is $218,000 of expenses that have been cut from the Fund 4 budget this year, all targeted to try to minimize the impact of what we're going through right now. Next slide. So since we're talking about filling the Park and Rec director position, I thought it would make sense to talk about what goes into the job. So there's a lot of detail here, but at the top level, it's planning, developing, scheduling a Park and Rec program. We all know that. There's basically three major areas: financial, which includes preparing a budget over $800,000 a year. The recreation side for programs and park activities, and the park side. There really are a lot of facilities and turf maintenance. There's open space to be maintained. So there's all of that. I'm going to go through into each one of these in a little more detail. And there's a lot of interaction with the public. Giving employees work direction daily, athletic coaches, other towns, school personnel. Rich is always interacting with a bunch of other organizations. And he's also obviously fully supports the Park and Rec Commission as a non-voting member. So I'm going to go into each one of these categories in a little more detail. I think the takeaway is that hopefully you'll see that this really is a full-time job. There's a lot goes into this. Okay, next slide. So if you look at just the financial side, and basically, I actually pulled this right out of the job description, and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I highlighted in bold some of the key points. So prepares the annual budget request. As you know, the budgets go through several iterations. It's approved by the commission first, and then it goes to the town manager. So there's a lot of iterations with that. Rich knows that stuff inside and out and does a great job with it. But there will be a learning curve for somebody else to understand all the different budgets, including the cell tower and the Fund 4 and Fund 1. Ordering all new and replacement equipment. There's a lot of equipment that the park department has to spec it out what he needs, and then to procure that. Oversees the Park and Recreation Special Fund, so that's about $500,000 just for Fund 4 every year on a typical year. Oversees construction projects and park improvements. So these are like the trail grants. These grants are, in excess of several hundred thousands of dollars, $200,000, $300,000 that Rich manages these programs to make sure they're done on time within budget. And there's always surprises, like building a bridge at Raymond Brook Pond. There's always surprises when you start, doing a project like that. Soil samples and planning and zoning meetings and conservation meetings, and but he knows how to do all that and get it through on time and on budget. And the last one, researches and obtains appropriate grants. So he does apply for grants, through the town, through working with Mike O'Leary, where appropriate, where he can, but as a municipality, we don't always qualify. So Rich is working a partnership with the Town Center Project and the Friends of Hebron Parks to help us obtain grants since they qualify as nonprofits. So that opens up the opportunity for additional grants. Okay, next page. And on the recreation side, it really is a year-round activity. There's prep, which matches the school year for 9 months. Youth basketball, there's like 60 teams, 8 different age groups, various towns. There's travel, there's rec, there's scheduling, there's referees. A lot goes into youth basketball, and it's always pulled off every year. There's vacation camps, there's summer camps, there's adult programs. It's a full-time year-round activity, and that's where we get all of our revenue from, is on the recreation side. And Rich is always constantly reviewing the areas that we have and trying to grow it where possible, and change it, like integrating with the Town Center Project on the holiday festivities this year, or starting up the farmers markets. We're always trying to listen to what the town needs and try to support that. And the last page is parks. So on the park side, a lot of people think, okay, parks, they kind of run themselves. Recreation's where all the action is, but Rich actually spends, I think Rich spends most of his time on the park side, more than half his time. Because of his expertise and knowledge, he's able to prepare and implement the integrated pest management plans. Most people are not qualified to do that. You need certifications to do that. Supervises the controls of all materials and supplies used in the maintenance, construction, and repairs of town parks. That might sound easy because it's just, fertilizers, pesticides, but you have to be in compliance. A lot of this is on school property, and there's Connecticut guidelines and federal guidelines, and Rich just makes sure that we fully comply with all of that. Oversees construction projects and park improvements. I've already talked about that, the scope of that. But in addition to just those big projects, it's maintain the irrigation systems, it's building dugouts. It's just a lot of things that people don't even know that's happening all the time, that because Rich just stays on top of it, you never hear about it, and it gets done. And the last one, hires, trains, and supervises employees. There's a fair amount of turnover, especially with seasonal workers. So he's got to do a lot of interviewing and hiring and try to retain the good people. So that's just a quick, dirty overview of what the position we're talking about and what's involved. I'm sure a lot of you knew that, but some are new to the Board of Selectmen, so I thought I would cover that. So when we talk about the contract for turf management and landscaping, this is when, after Rich leaves the employment of the town of Hebron, we would contract with him to provide turf management and landscaping. It's about 500 hours a year, and he would be a contractor, not an employee. And I think this is necessary for the town in order to fulfill the Ram and Andover turf management contracts. I don't think the town has any other expertise to be able to provide that, and I think the Ram and Andover would prefer to have Rich's expertise. That's what they're really contracting for. The good part of that is those contracts would fund a major portion of this turf contract. And the benefit is that Hebron would also have, Rich's services for turf management, again, including the IPM plans for the Hebron schools, which are pretty detailed, and like I say, have to comply with all the federal and state guidelines. Okay, so now we'll get in some organization charts. If there's any questions, jump in. I feel like I'm going really fast, but I don't want to take too much of your time. So this is kind of the current organization. It's kind of, if you look back in time, maybe, 6 months or whatever. But So there's a Park and Rec director, and then on the left-hand side, there's the prep staff that reported into the rec supervisor and the rec manager. So that's kind of the chain of command for the recreation side. And on the park operations, there's 3 full-time and 3 seasonal park operations people, and there was an office administration position. So that's kind of how it was. There's currently 3 open positions: the rec manager position, the office administrator, and one of the seasonal park maintainers is open, again, as I mentioned, to try to cut some of the costs. So that's kind of where we're starting from. Okay. So this is one of the 2 scenarios that I mentioned earlier on. This would be a full-time park and rec director with the turf management consultant contract. And this is the recommendation from the Park and Rec Commission. So basically, and this kind of goes along with other things we've been working with Rich and Andy. We'd eliminate the rec manager position and create a rec supervisor 1 and rec supervisor 2. So basically, the rec supervisor 2 is what we have today for a rec supervisor, and rec supervisor 1 is kind of a hybrid between what the rec supervisor was and the rec manager was. So there is additional responsibility there, and they would be able to assist with some of the management responsibilities. But so that's what we're recommending. Both scenarios have that in the going forward scenarios. So the prep staff reports to the rec supervisor 1 position, which is currently filled. The rec supervisor 2 position is open for now until revenues and programs pick up again. Park operations would still report into the full-time park and rec director. And then you have this turf management landscaping consultant, which is which would be Rich, and is 500 hours a year, contributing to the Hebron properties as well as the remnant over turf management contracts. So from my calculations, because the full-time park and rec director that would replace Rich, even starting on February 1st, which is around the time Rich is leaving, if this person was to start February 1st, there'd still be savings of about $12,000 in the current budget, based on the fact that this person would make less than Rich because they'd be less experienced. And so we think that you could hire somebody with that potential savings of somewhere around $12,000 to $15,000 annual savings. So the key points that the Park and Rec Commission, key reason why the Park and Rec Commission recommends this. First of all, we believe it really is a full-time job. You saw from the job description all the tasks that have to be done. Rich is working in excess of 45 hours a week already to try to do this job, and I think it would be very difficult for him to be able to do this job at 20 hours a week. I think things would not get done. We think this is also, and the Commission felt very strongly on this point, it's the best way to recovery is to generate revenue, because obviously this model depends on revenue to support itself. So we think we need a full-time person in there to help build up the spring programs and the summer camps, and to be ready when things turn around. And to that point, nobody knows exactly when the vaccine will be available, but best guess is it's going to be around the first of the year. So we think that by springtime, maybe things will be back to normal. Again, it's anyone's guess, but we think we should be ready for that and to be able to support the town needs. And finally, the town needs park and rec programs. I think everyone's been kind of boarded up, and they need activities. That's why they started some of the virtual programs now. But if we had a full-time person, working that, they could provide more opportunity there. I'm going to jump to the second scenario. So this is the scenario that I believe is recommended by the town manager, and I'll just go through it quickly, and then I'll allow Andy to add anything he wants. So there's 2 calendar years here, right? So the current calendar year, fiscal year 20 to 21, has a part-time park and rec director, and the proposal is that part-time director would be Rich Calarco. Rich has agreed that after his retirement in early February to work 20 hours a week, up to three days a week. So he would be a contractor, not a part-time employee. So he'd be off the payroll. There'd be no benefits, but he would collect the contractor fee. So that's why we talked about, it'd be really hard to do this job at 20 hours a week. So that would kind of cover, it's kind of like carry us through to for the current fiscal year. And based on Rich's current salary and benefits, I've calculated this would save approximately $19,000 a year versus if Rich stayed on in his full-time salary and benefits. So the savings are pretty close, 12,000 to 19,000. The savings for both scenarios. So the proposal is that with next year's budget, there would be a full-time director hired, and there would be a contract with Rich to continue with a turf management consulting contract. So it really comes down to timing, right? It's do we start now or start later? So those are the two scenarios. Andy, do you want to add anything, or want me to keep going? You're on mute.
Yeah, it took 3 tries. Ken, keep going.
Okay, all right, so let's get one more slide. So like I said, it really comes down to timing. I kind of laid out what I think the interview process would be. Again, these are just our recommendations, and I have had some discussions with Andy on this. There's to prepare for the job posting. We have identified we do need to update the job description. There's some certifications in there that would limit our applicant pool, so we want to take those out. And I think we should create a job screenings criteria to help us analyze the job, the qualifications and skills of the applicants, to try to do that up front. And then the job gets posted. So it's usually 4 to 6 weeks for job postings. Again, just a recommendation that we utilize some of the online posting sites and try to get as far reaching out as we can. Review the applications when they come in, narrow that down to maybe 7 to 10 applicants. And then again, this is kind of similar to how other positions have been filled. 2 rounds of interviews, you go from 7 to 10, narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 for the final interviews. I say here conducted by town employees and Park and Rec Commission. I mean, we're offering to help in any way. We've got, in the past, we've utilized Park and Rec directors from surrounding towns to help with the interview process, or former Park and Rec directors from surrounding towns. We've gotten like the town engineer involved, or the town planner, people that interact with the Park and Rec director quite a bit, I think would be helpful for the interview process. And we also have former Park and Rec Commission members that are willing to help as well. So again, whatever help you need, we're willing to help. And then just post-interview, all the normal background checks, drug testing, and the transition period for the new hire from their old job to the new job. So you add that all up, it's about 4 months. So from a timing standpoint, I think it really comes down to, when do you start? In order to have the person start February 1st, you'd have to start about October 1st to get that done. If you're leaning more towards a June, July start, then you'd be looking probably March 1st to start. And maybe there's something in between. I don't know. So that's all I have. I'd like to see if anyone else from the commission has anything they'd like to say, Eric or John or Charles.
Hey, Ken, I'll comment real quick. John Russo, I think you mentioned it, but I think it's worth saying again, is that
look up on our picture.
Revenue's the issue here. If we don't have a full-time person, we're not going to generate revenue and cover the expenses we need to run the program. So it's a chicken and egg conversation. So we feel we need to have a full-time person there to ultimately build and run the programs that generate the revenue that pay for the programs. So I just want to emphasize that again. There's a lot of detail in Ken's presentation. A lot of work went into it, but the bottom line is that's how we wound up in our recommendation.
Good point, John.
Hang on. Is it working?
Eric or Charles?
Hang on. Hold on.
We can hear you. No, you're on, guys. If you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Same room.
Yeah, so stop
Sorry,
making fun of Ken, all right? Because we can hear you the whole time. Right?
Good evening, folks. Eric Lemieux. I just wanted to reiterate what Ken was saying as far as Rich's hours. I mean, he's putting 45 hours in right now, and to cut that position back to 20. I just think that's there's going to be some major loss there, and I think this our commission, along with many of your members, have said in the past, what a great job Rich has done. It's going to be big shoes to fill. And, we have to keep that in mind. Also, I think that when COVID is done, as Ken said, whenever the vaccine is there, I think people are going to be looking to get back to normal. And we kind of, need to be prepared to have our programs ready to go. And, can't have that lag time because we'll lose revenue to towns that are ready, Glastonbury, Colchester. People are going to be looking to get out of their houses, get back to, adult programs, kid programs. And we certainly don't want to lose that. We want to keep them here in Hebron. We want to keep being able to offer those programs to Hebron residents. So I just think it's very important that we think this through and, keep it at a full-time position. So thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that and everything that Ken said. I feel that it would be easy short-term to look at moving this to a part-time position to save a little bit of money over the next few months. However, that's going to be a big detriment to the long-term goals of the department and what we've worked on for years and years and years. So we absolutely need somebody full-time in this position. And moreover, if Rich wasn't going to retire, we wouldn't be looking at moving this to a part-time position. So it doesn't make sense to start looking at it as a part-time position now just because that he is leaving. And the fact that he's been gracious enough to offer his time as a contractor to come in is going to allow us to still bring in revenue from some of the other things that he's been working on with turf projects with RAM and the town of Andover. So I strongly recommend that we, as does the board, that we continue to keep this as a full-time position and that we start the search sooner than later for someone to come in and take over and start the next chapter for Parks and Recreation Department. Thank you.
Okay, Dan Larson, if I could ask both Andy to explain his ideas and his reasoning, and then I'd also like to hear from Rich, just to kind of get an outline in this COVID-19 environment. Trying to ascertain what the level of hours required are with the programs at a, I guess, pretty much halt until this kind of gets either a vaccine or what have you. So I'd like to hear, as I say, from both Andy on his viewpoints and Rich as to what he sees happening on the day-to-day scenarios with this COVID-19.
I'll just go quickly. And I think the Parks and Rec Commission and myself have come a long way from where we started. By no means am I or my comments adversarial to what we're trying to do. Secondly is both proposing full-time positions. I just wanted to wait a little bit until the fiscal year or as some time would allow us to save some money, as Ken stated. I think our numbers are a little bit different in savings with my finance director, but from that going on. So the problem is what we're all dealing with, COVID-19. That devastated Fund 14. We had 2 salaries that came out of Fund 14 that the revenue went away, had to lay the people off. So for 17 years, the Parks and Recs Commission has been trying to get the town to pick up one of those salaries. So knowing there's no revenue and knowing that we needed somebody in the office, we did that. And that's to the tune of about $69,000. That's not budgeted right now. They are on our town's payroll, and I've got to make that up. So that's the reason for my proposal, is to still hire a full-time position But a lot of the programs and duties, basketball, summer camp, that's still on hold. I'm the chairman of the Chatham Health District. I deal with this stuff weekly. I don't see it happening anytime soon. The only thing that I'm asking for is to be able to work with the commission. And if those things start to lighten up, we can be working behind the scenes already with the job description, the outline of putting it out to bid. It may not have to be as long or as short, depending on the need of the Parks Department. But my total reasoning is I need to make up that $70,000 that wasn't budgeted. So if I can do that with benefits and salary, still keep Rich part-time, who's been the director for multiple years with the existing crew, the turf management. The reason we want to keep the turf management programs is that is a direct revenue that would go back into Fund 14, which is depleted right now. So I think we're really close. I think there might be some concern that we're not looking to put a full-time director in there, and that was never my intention. I just wanted to see if we could buy a couple months. So I don't think we're that far apart, but I'm open to anything. It was an economic decision, and I think we can make some savings there with not a lot of stuff that normally goes on at the park. If the park was normal, COVID didn't hit, we wouldn't even be discussing this.
Rich, you have anything you wanted to add into this discussion?
Well, just to let you know, I mean, COVID has been a tremendous hit for us. The three big revenue items that take away the contracts from Andover and Ram is our summer camps, which we did not have, prep, which we lost last year $100,000 of revenue, and expenses, you know, would have been maybe 60, 70. So that we lost at the end of the year is where we kind of pay in our business plan. And right now we're operating prep with 20 kids in the morning. We normally have close to 40, and we have about 16 after. And it has a lot to do, which I can outline, and it has a lot to do with the space that we have to meet Child Protective Services requirements. You know, we have to keep certain distances and areas. So the rooms that normally can take 20 kids can now only take 10, you know. So, you know, those are just the numbers to make you aware and, you know, to add into those areas.
Thank you. Any other board members have any questions? Not that I probably have comments, but go ahead. John or Gail or Peter?
Mr. Chair, I have comments, but you can go first.
Okay.
I do want to add my thoughts to it because
Please.
I'm the liaison. Not now, but I'm saying I do want to add some. So you go ahead, and then I'll follow you or anybody else. But I do want to have a minute or two after you're done.
I just have a quick question. When did we know that Rich was leaving? I'm just wondering why we haven't started the search.
Andy?
His official date, he's going to work until February, into the calendar year, month of or two into next calendar year. So that's why we haven't started it. And then due to the financial hit that the department took, like I said, we're looking to try to make up that $70,000 for that salary that's not budgeted. So Rich is still in the position until February.
Okay.
I think one of the things that kind of overshadows a lot of the discussions is the dollars and cents. You know, what I'm hearing is we've already, you know, we came into this coming year with an extremely tight budget, minimal wiggle room to begin with. And now already we've taken a $69,000 hit, and we also know that the schools have requested an additional $500,000. I think part of the problem is going to be that we just don't have this, the money tree. It kind of dried up a little bit because of the lack of rain, and no new money leaves got generated. So
I have a few black.
that may kind of drive our decision more than anything else. I'll open it up to the floor for thoughts.
No, Peter.
Guys, Charles, Eric, did you want to throw something in there to provide some clarification? I thought I heard someone, I don't know if it was you guys, because by all means, if you guys I thought I heard someone wanting to add something from the commission. So I'm all ears before I might make my comments.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think it's important to know, because I agree with Dan, it's definitely a dollars and cents thing, but if we're only focused on the expense portion of this, we're missing the point. The Parks and Rec department has been a self-sustaining revenue generating department for years and years and years, and if we don't have somebody that's in there that's focused on that revenue generating part, because there's other towns right now that are having programs and they're putting programs out and they are generating revenue. We need somebody that's in there that's focused on that. And if we're only focused on trying to cut corners, then all we're going to do is we're going to reduce costs and we're going to have no revenue coming in. So it's really important for all of us to realize that this is a revenue generating department. We need somebody that's in there that's going to be putting out programming in addition to servicing the entire town. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, please.
I'm just, but thank you. Being a liaison to the Parks and Rec Commission, I applaud them in terms of their thoughtful approach and just really good dialogue, and they do a really nice job of really thinking through all the details. And I understand completely like what Charles is talking about, and then even thinking about John and that chicken and egg conversation, and so I understand their position completely, and why they recommended the scenario that they did. But my thought on it is I'm looking to give the maximum flexibility to our town manager and look at his recommendations. I don't think we're that far off. I think as Andy's talking about, it gives him a little additional flexibility because we don't know. We're assuming things in the future, and giving him that additional flexibility to work with the Parks and Rec Commission and to keep Rich probably longer is a good thing. Supporting turf management, reducing expenses, but giving Andy some of that additional flexibility is where I lean. I know that's not what the commission's recommending, and I think it's well thought out and it makes perfect sense. If I were on the commission, I'd probably recommend the same thing. But as I think about it from a position in the town, my leaning is towards supporting Andy's recommendation. And the most important thing that I heard, and that would have been it is important to me, is that this is a full-time position. As we transition, Andy's asking for flexibility, but we're not taking away the full-time position. It's just trying to give him a little additional flexibility from a budget perspective. I understand the exposure, and it's a tough call. But I'm hearing Andy that we're close, and they have a good working relationship. So my bias after listening to all this and having been at the meetings, Parks and Rec, is the scenario that's been presented by Andy.
I also want to, Dan Larson, also want to state that I'm very curious, and I would ask the commission to come up or let us know what some of these fundraising ideas are that some of these other towns are doing, and how they're getting around some of the COVID issues to do these fundraisers. I do know that I've seen, I want to say it's in Andover, they're doing the farmers market. I believe it's maybe once a month, and it's on a Wednesday, if I remember right. I happened to actually be driving through it the other day. I'm interested in knowing what they're doing to actually generate, income, and if we can think out of the box and come up with some of those other types of ideas. definitely would be beneficial not only to your commission, but to the town. Comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, please.
I read all of this stuff before the meeting so I could be prepared tonight. And I have to say, and I'm sorry the commission won't like this, but I go along with the town manager recommendations. We're putting it off only for a few months to give Andy some flexibility, and the fact that we've lost all this money and we have no idea when we're going to be able to get back in. Maybe there'll be a vaccine beginning of the year. Maybe there's a lot of people who won't want to use the vaccine. We don't know where COVID is going. And so I go along with the town manager recommendation that we put off and get the funds, the savings for a few months.
Can I ask, and I guess it would be Rich, if he stays on as a contractor employee, how would that change the workload distribution?
Well, I'm not, what do you mean well, that's one of the things I would handle, obviously, the budgeting and the scheduling of park personnel.
As part of that 20 hours a week?
Right,
Or-
and then obviously the turf plans, and the capital right now.
So Rich, the
And-
flip side of that is what wouldn't get done if you work 20 hours a week? Maybe that's another way of looking at it.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, obviously, I won't have a lot of input on the recreation end. I'm not there every single day. You know, I mean, things happen every day. So, I mean, you know, that type of stuff. You know, and
So who would handle those data? Who would handle those day-to-day decisions? And would there need to be some sort of compensation for that added responsibility? And I'm not sure if that's maybe an Andy question.
Yeah, well,
wait,
Rich is the,
Andy, can I just cut you off 1 second? I'm sorry. The park guys get a schedule. Like I wasn't in today. I had some appointments I had to go to. I have a schedule drafted on the board that they know and we discuss it. So, you know, those orders will be clearly taken care of. It's no different than when I'm not there. And one of the changes Andy mentioned earlier was the rec supervisor position to be moved up to that one category. And that would handle, you know, the stuff going on in rec. Because essentially right now, there's really only one major program going on. So, and then Andy, just want to give you that information. I didn't mean to cut you off.
that's okay. I just, once again, due to the COVID, Rich's responsibilities have dropped a lot due to a lot of the programs and stuff. Fields, they still maintain them, but there's not a lot of play. There's not a lot of scheduling because it's not going on. There wasn't any summer camp. We're hoping and praying the basketball programs come back, summer camp comes back. Those are great revenue drivers. But until we have a better, you know, crystal ball to let us know that that's going to happen, I'm willing to instate a full-timer whenever we can. But I think with Rich being the past director and him still being in there as a capacity would even still be better than if we brought in a brand new full-timer at this point in time with the learning curve. I agree with the commission that there's going to be a learning curve no matter what. And hopefully with Erica there, we can keep the programs going. And as they increase, she can come to us and say, hey, it's getting busy. We need to move on this sooner than later. But if we agree to move forward with Rich, we're going to have a contract for a certain amount of time into the next fiscal year, but with a guarantee that we're definitely going to have somebody in place at the worst case scenario at the start of the next fiscal year.
Any other thoughts or comments from anybody?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to present our Park and Rec Commission recommendation. We'll continue to work with the town manager as we always have, and looking forward to move forward. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very much. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everybody else. Charles, Eric, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You guys do a great job, and you know the Parks and Rec are the jewel of the town.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Again, hard decisions, and sadly, a lot of them are a lot of decisions are financially based. So are you looking for action from us tonight or no?
I'm not. I wanted them to be able to chance to vet it out, and I wanted them to be able to express their concerns to the Board of Selectmen, but I can work with them moving forward.
Yeah, I go along with that as well.
Then I thank you, and I believe I concur. I think we all concur. And let's all pray that, you know, they are able to come up with a viable vaccine in a reasonable amount of time. You know, worldwide, it's hitting virtually even New Zealand has got COVID cases on the increase again. And they virtually shut down their country. And it's still rearing its ugly head. So thank you all for everything you've done. And let Andy and gentlemen continue on, I guess, with these discussions. Thank you, Rich, too. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Hey, you're welcome.
Say goodbye.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we got quite a bit left on this agenda.
Yep.
So next under the agenda would be to approve the job description for the Parks and Recreation Program Aid and Program Supervisor 1. That's in your packet. So two job descriptions for the Parks and Recreation Department are being presented for revision. They've been in your packet. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at it.
Yes.
This is an entry-level position for prep staff. The change is to eliminate the requirements for employees to have a driver's license. That's just a job description change. We're finding some kids are getting their licenses later, or with the COVID having trouble getting their licenses. So we think that's a hindrance to us right now. So that's kind of self-explanatory. And there's a motion for that, and then we can move on to the second one.
Okay. Well, I'll read the motion, then open it up for discussion. Okay. Move the Hebron Board of Selectmen approve the revised, no.
That was it.
Okay. Move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen approve the revised job description for the Parks and Recreation Program Aid as presented. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. John?
John Collins, aye.
Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
And myself, Dan Larson, aye. The next one, move that the Hebron Board of Selectmen approve the job description for Parks and Recreation Program Supervisor 1 as presented. Open it up for discussion. Any discussion? Hearing none. John?
John Collins, aye.
Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
And Daniel Larson, aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is seems like the night to approve grants. So I hope the Board of Selectmen realizes when you're dealing with the state, they don't give you a lot of time. You guys meet twice a month. These things come out last minute, so we have to throw them on here. But a lot of these are repetitive, so hopefully no selectman really has a big problem with that. The next one is to approve the neglected cemetery grant program application. And once again, I wish John Barron was on there to hear this. What we're applying for is monies to fix up that cemetery in question in one of his letters right across the street on 316.
Okay, I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved, the Hebron Board of Selectmen authorize the application of the amount of $2,000 to the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management Neglected Cemetery Grant Program and authorize Andrew J. Tierney to sign any necessary documents relating to this grant application. Discussion? Discussion? Hearing none. John?
John Collins, aye.
Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
Dan Larson? Aye.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is item 8E. That's to approve the historic document preservation grant application. Once again, this is repetitive for those of you that have been on the board for a while. Attached is an application prepared by the town clerk, Carla Pompowitz, for the Connecticut State Library Historic Document Preservation Program, targeting grant in the amount of $5,500. The proposal is for a project to preserve and organize the grantor-grantee index system.
And this is something we virtually do every year. Be it resolved that the Hebron Board of Selectmen approve the application to the State of Connecticut, Connecticut State Library for the targeted grant fiscal year 2021 Historic Documents Preservation Program in the amount of $5,500 and authorize Town Manager Andrew J. Tierney to apply for, accept, and receive the grant, and there's a typo there, sign any necessary documents. Open it up for discussion. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. John Collins.
John Collins, aye.
Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
Dan Larson, aye.
Motion carries. Very good. Thank you once again. Next up is to approve municipal brownfields grant program application. I know Mike O'Leary has joined us. He's been waiting patiently since his other assignment or obligation earlier tonight. Hi, Michael. So in your packet, it says attaches a memo from the town planner, Mike O'Leary, regarding the municipal brownfields grant program. Mr. O'Leary will be in attendance at the meeting to discuss the proposed options for the grant and seek direction and approval from the Board of Selectmen. So without further ado, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having this on the agenda, and I'll be brief. I know it's not getting any earlier. We've had a sort of a pause in the state brownfield remediation program for I think probably around 3 years at this point. So this is a new announcement that they are opening up a grant process for assessment, which we've been very successful at, but more importantly, remediation, which is cleanup money. And in the past, we've applied for cleanup funds for the 501 Church Street, the property that the town now owns, the old gas station on Church Street across from the Airline Trail parking lot. You probably all know that. The town took possession of the property, removed the building because it was an eyesore and an attractive nuisance, but it sits there and it's still contaminated. So the ideal there is to get it cleaned up, get an RFP going, attract a developer, put that into some productive use. We have a brownfields task force that was specifically tasked with that property. They've been really excellent. And if the board decides to go ahead with this tonight, we'll reassemble and dig into this again. But they've put together, with the help of some professionals, a concept plan for that property for private development, an RFP for a developer, but first we need to get it cleaned up. So that's the 501 Church Street, and I guess the question is, shall we Does the board wish to apply again to see if we can get money for that? I think the chances are better now that the town owns the property. And the grant applications are pretty much done. So it's not a tremendous amount of work on that one. And looking through the applications, and it's a two-step process this time. It's a pre-app and then a final app. So the pre-app is simply to send in some information to the state, and they'll tell us if the sites are eligible. And in the past, you could only apply for one. So that was the main purpose of the memo. But since I sent that memo out, I contacted the director of the program at the state, and she told me that the town could actually apply for more than one. So that kind of opened up a whole new thought process. We could actually apply for both of these. Now, the other one is the Tertian Mill. It's a little different. It's privately owned. We do have a developer that has bought it who has some really interesting and exciting plans to develop it. There are some obstacles. Of course, one is environmental, one is a water supply. But he is very enthused about moving forward. And my thought was, you know, should the town seek funding to assist with at least the environmental issues to encourage a private developer to move forward and do something really great on a site like that. I did confirm, again, since I wrote that memo from the state, that they had no problem from a site that the town did not own, but would require kind of common sense that we would have agreements from the owner for access, and that the owner would obviously carry through with the remediation. Now, from the state standpoint, if we did apply for that and we were approved for that site, the town could either conduct the remediation or it could act as a pass-through to the private property owner to conduct the remediation. I've reached out to the owner, kind of surprisingly, a little bit to me. I've not heard back from him in the past week about the site, so I'm a little bit unsure of that particular site. But I thought it was good to bring it to the attention of the board. They're looking for the pre-apps now. I think it's always good not to go in at the last second, be proactive and get our applications in. And I was looking for the opinion of the board as to which site, either site, both sites would be of interest to the board, at least to submit a pre-application. I should say on both sites, through grants, we have done phase 1, 2, 3 environmental site assessments and remedial action plans. So we have some really solid data on both sites. And I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, Mike, can you just, I'm just trying to understand the, wondering why he's not returning your call, but we'll forget that for a second. But does the remediation, when the owner buys the property, how does he sort of incorporate the needed remediation into his development timeline and plan? Are we privy to that? And would this actually allow him to accelerate his plans and therefore bring a new business to Hebron faster than if he were to do it on his own?
Yeah, he entered into the site with eyes wide open. We provided him with all the environmental reports. It was not a surprise. And I hate to go into too much of his business in a public forum, but he's indicated to us that he was going to move forward with private financing. So it was a little bit more flexible in terms of what he could do. The remedial action plan showed alternatives where he could cap most of the site, or he could do more active excavation and disposal and that type of a cleanup. I'm not an environmental expert, but there's options there. The cleanup costs range from about $190,000 to $260,000, depending on what option he wanted. But certainly, if the town moved forward and assisted a developer with some of this, he certainly, I think, could move more quickly in some of the other aspects, such as the water supply. He certainly needs to get a public water supply well approved on that site through the state. So removing obstacles, I think, is always a good thing to promoting economic development. And I think
so
that
the extent, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The extent of the remediation, if we were to get the grant, would we have then more of a say into the extent of that, the level of remediation, or is that sort of, it's all, the state says you need to do this, or does our involvement allow us to have more of a say, and therefore, is that better for our community?
John?
No, I mean, I don't think it gives us any.
No, I didn't know.
allows-
I have no idea. I'm just trying to learn. I didn't know how it worked. I'm just trying to understand it. So
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much this is going to be driven by the state. They're going to fund it.
Yeah, okay.
and They're going to approve a remediation approach or not.
So our idea is to try to just try to help this owner facilitate maybe getting this done more quickly and
Yeah.
support the development. Okay, I just didn't know if there was any other sort
If
of.
I could just add to that, if you look at the application
Can do
form,
to help this guy, to help the owner, I think is important, and because this could be a flagship, business in town. It ties to Parks and Rec and ties to, it's just like it could be a great thing. So
My biggest thing is I don't like leaving bad stuff in the ground, even though it may be a lot of clay, even though it may not be migrating anywheres. It really needs to get out. And we keep, applying for grants year after year. I think we should go for both properties if we can. If we get one, great. If we get both, great. They both need to be addressed in a positive fashion at some point in time. You're basically got nitroglycerin and you're just waiting for somebody to step on the detonator. It needs to get out. And it's a prime aquifer under there. Or it's always been told that that's a prime aquifer area. So I don't know if it goes as far as Turgeon Mills. You could tell us more on that, Mike, but
yeah, the contamination at the 501 Church Street is a little bit more severe because it was a gas station. It was corroded gasoline diesel tanks. It's a pretty good sized plume that's heading toward the Raymond Brook Marsh and the aquifer that underlies the marsh. So that from an environmental standpoint, that one is really significant. The one up on the Tertian Mill it's too bad. There wasn't a gas station. There was some manufacturing operations in there, and the contamination mostly is through some just dumping on the site over the years and covering it and dumping more, and there's some mixed up junk that's buried that's leaching out, but not as dramatic as the corroded gas tanks on the other site. But they're both need to be cleaned up at some point.
right. So the Tertian Mill, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong. I looked at it a while ago, but sometimes with these remediations, there's some risk because you haven't delineated it correctly, and there's going to be additional costs. I think Tertian Mill, you've got it, and the cost estimate is going to be pretty likely to be on point. So that's good. And like I said, I think Tertian Mill is going to be an important, it's a historic property in some respects. If we can do something now, it'd be great.
Okay. So we would need to fill in the blanks, not only on the locations, but also the monetary amount. Michael, do you have a suggestion for that part of the motion? We could. I asked that we not cap it because there's no need to at this time. Okay. But the estimated cleanup cost of 501 Church Street, and this is a 3-year-old remedial action plan, is $650,490. So, say approximately 700,000. We would try to get that updated before the final application is due. We do not have to put a number down on the pre-app. It's okay. So the motion we had tonight had that space. So yeah. Before one of the selectmen read it, I wanted to clarify that. Good information. As I said, the Tertian Mill has a range of anywhere from 190 to 262. So I would, go for the upper number, maybe say up to 270 or so, or approximately 270, if you want to put a number in.
Do we need to do a number tonight?
No, in my opinion. It's just sending a pre-app in, describing the property, describing what the problem is, and they'll tell us if it's eligible for a full application. Then you'll have to put detailed numbers in.
Okay. Be it resolved that the Hebron Board of Selectmen authorize the pre-application and full application to the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development Municipal Brownfield Grant Fund for their Turgeon Properties and 501 Church Street property. Further resolved that Andrew J. Tierney, Town Manager, is authorized to accept or apply for and accept and receive the grant if awarded and to sign any documents related to the grant. That's if we do not need to do any dollar amounts to that. Does that suffice?
I think it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody want to have me add any kind of a friendly amendment?
I think they were written fine.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. With no further discussion then, all those in favor signify by saying aye. We'll start with John.
John Collins, aye.
Gail.
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter.
Peter Casper, aye.
Daniel Larson, aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
Move forward.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, next on the agenda is 8G. That is to adopt the resolution authorizing the 2020-2021 Emergency Management Performance Grant application. Attaches a copy of the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection Emergency Management Performance Grant application for the period from October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2021. This is an annual grant application which provides funding for the emergency management operations of the town of Hebron.
Okay, again, resolution. Resolved that the town of Hebron may enter into with and deliver to the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, any and all documents which it deems to be necessary or appropriate, and further resolved that Andrew J. Tierney, as town manager of the town of Hebron, is authorized and directed to execute and deliver any and all documents on behalf of the town of Hebron and to do and perform all acts and things which he deems to be necessary or appropriate to carry out the terms of such documents. This authorization is for the EMPG grant for the performance period October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2021 in the amount of $5,000 with a local match of $5,000. Okay, hearing the resolution, any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. Motion to approve. John?
John Collins, aye.
Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
Dan Larson, aye. Thank you.
Very good. Just quickly before we move on, I just want to take the time to thank my staff. Dory's filming the meeting on Facebook, and Donna writes all these motions for all these agendas and these meetings. And that saves the town a lot of money. A lot of towns have the attorneys do that, where we do 99% in-house. So I might want to make sure that that's appreciated, and it saves the taxpayers a lot of money.
Thank you,
Next.
behind the scenes people.
Next is the draft agenda for October 1st, 2020 meeting. And as I stated, I think we have a commitment from Eversource spokespeople to be there to answer questions. And that's more about the storm, not so much about the rate increase.
Oh, no. This would be about the storm and how,
Yes.
how they prioritize and the safety issues that they come up against, especially when dealing with storms that, they have to be cognizant of, and, in many aspects, the safety aspects that they want the customers to be cognizant of.
Yes.
Who's coming from Eversource?
So right now we have two representatives, Pat Bands, who's been our representative for anywhere between 8 and 10 years. So she's going to come. And then we also have a liaison that during the storm, he is the contact between the town and the actual administration. He speaks to they call it the war room, where they do all the dispatching. We send in our situations, our block rows, wires down, and he works with myself and Paul Bancroft, who's the emergency management director through the storm.
So are they going to be prepared for some tough questions?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it is what it is. I think they've gone around. I don't think Hebron's the only one that's requested them to come out. I mean, as long as we keep it professional, I think they'll be fine.
Okay.
I see you grinning, John. What are you up to?
Well, I mean, I've been involved. I've testified in front of the Energy and Technology Committee on this, and the Take Back the Grid Act. And everybody is wants something done. And there's not.
That's right.
It's universal. There's a universal complaint here. Not just one complaint, a lot of complaints. So. And we've had residents, we've had citizens talk to us, right? Andy, I mean, there's tons of people here that are not happy with things. So, if they should expect to have some serious questions. People lost a lot of money here. I mean, the businesses lost money. We're out of power for 5 to 7 days. It's not going to. It'll be professional. It'll be friendly, but there's going to be some good questions.
Good.
So if you have anything else for that agenda, get it to us so we can get it on there and move forward. Be the October 1st.
Okay. Next should be our consent agenda.
If there's no other new business, next is the consent agenda.
Okay. And I'm not sure, did everybody get a chance to read the minutes? One set, I'm not sure which one I read, came out this afternoon, I think it was.
September 3rd came out this afternoon.
So was everybody able to review those?
Yeah.
I went through it quickly. I guess it's okay.
Okay. So, move that the Board of Selectmen approve the following consent agenda items and motions contained therein as if individually adopted. And we have A, the approval of the minutes of August 20, 2020, the regular meeting. 2, the September 3rd, 2020 regular meeting, and then the tax refunds as listed. Anybody need anything pulled out? Any discussion? Hearing none, please signify by saying aye if you are in approval. John?
John Collins, aye.
Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
Dan Larson, myself, aye. Okay. Moving on, we have the liaison reports. Gail?
Okay, I've got Commission on Aging. They started a new program for residents that are 60 or over 60 or totally disabled. It's called Stay Connected. The goal is to provide individuals with the technology to communicate with others. They were given hands-on instructions as needed. So anyone who wants to know more about that should call the Senior Center at 860-228-1700. Douglas Library, the Board of Trustees met last Monday, and I'm pleased to tell a lot of people that they will be opening for additional hours beginning October 5th. And the Children's Department is now offering takeaway activity packets to accompany the pre-recorded story time videos. That's for the children 2 to 4 years old. You can register on the library website for story time, and then you will get access to the activity packets. And we probably all know that the Hebron Board of Ed is meeting tonight while we're meeting, so I wasn't able to attend that. But school has opened successfully, and the students and the staff are all delighted to be back in school. That's it, Dan.
Thank you. Okay, Peter?
Board of Finance, nothing new to share with the board this evening, and Parks and Rec Commission obviously was covered extensively earlier on our agenda, so I have nothing new to add.
Okay, John?
I have nothing.
And actually, I have nothing, wasn't able to attend the fire department, and historic properties was canceled. So I guess that's it. Andy? Andy?
I covered RAM already, so just quickly, we're under WPCA. We're still in dispute with Lebanon on the flows, so we're trying to mediate that. We'll see how that pans out. So to be continued.
Okay. Well, with that, I guess we go to public comment.
Donna, I'm not sure if there's any public comment, but you can ask.
And we want to read that letter, right, Andy, that we didn't cover earlier.
We can. It was in correspondence. It's sent to everybody. You guys got it. So.
Oh yeah, no, we read. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we had to read it. No,
No, it wasn't asked to be read into the record. It was a correspondence.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Well, without hearing a public comment, I guess we will then go into anticipated executive session.
In doing so, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that you invite in both myself and Donna Lanza, who's going to run the virtual portion, and make sure it is an executive session.
Okay. So move into executive session, and we'll invite in Donna Lanza and Andrew Tierney. And that will be at 9:13 p.m.
Okay, so Donna's just going to give her a minute to make sure it's just us on this broadcast.
At this time, we ask other people in attendance to leave the meeting. You can sign back in after if you want to hear any action taken. But at this time, we ask you to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so how do we know? Okay.
I'm working on it, Dan. I just have to get a couple things done here. I'll be right back with you.
Nope, not a problem at all. Thank you. Suppose while we're waiting, we could sing Kumbaya or something. No. If I were to sing that, I think everybody would just flock away from the
This conference will now be recorded.
And I'm just going to get Dory back so she can resume the live streaming. Okay. I do have the full title of the contract as well. If Gail, when you make that motion, I could just finish it for you. It's unless you want me to give it to you right now.
No, actually, we need to make sure we word the beginning of the motion correctly. We move that the proposed motion is that we move to approve the 3-year contract, which will reopen after 1 year for wages only. And this contract goes back to July 1st of 2020. And you got a more complete title of the union than I have in the minute?
Sure, the collective bargaining agreement between the town of Hebron and the Hebron Town Supervisors Union, Local 81857, AFSCME Council 4. And it's July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor? We'll start with John.
John Collins, aye.
Gail?
Gail Richmond, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
And myself, Dan Larson, aye. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you very much. That,
Nice job.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. We'll get that ratified, and then we'll have all the contracts next year. So
That's good.
Yeah,
you'll
great
see,
job.
you'll see an increase in the town attorney's bill because we're going to negotiate all of them, but it shouldn't be too bad.
You've done incredible work. So, over the years, it just shows. It just shows. And again, we're a very fortunate community.
It's consistency. We have a lot of long-term employees for multiple years. Long-term labor attorney who's very good. He doesn't spend a lot of time on this, so the expense is kept down. But we've been multiple years cleaning these up, so it makes it a lot easier. But insurance is always the big numbers, and co-pays and things like that. But we'll continue to go in the right direction.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Anything else to come before the body?
I don't think I'm going to get invited to the Park and Rec picnic this weekend, but other than that.
I may invite you. The only thing is, who are they serving for dinner?
Yeah. I didn't think that we were that far apart, but they're compassionate. I get it.
It's the thing is, we still have the cold, hard reality that we have a certain dollar amount at our disposal, and we are not in we do not have the ability to spend money we do not have. It's pretty, and we don't know what's coming down the pike yet.
Well, that's it. The other thing is I have my ears to the ground. They already canceled the flower shows and stuff for next year at the civic centers. Yeah. I've got a huge function that I run in May. That's not looking good. If that doesn't happen, that organization I've been belonged to, that's been in existence for 75 years, is going to go defunct. So what I've tried to explain to the Parks and Rec guys, I have as much passion for them as they do, but if there's no programs to be working on, and until we have some sort of forecast that is going to happen after the first of the year or something, then I'd be all for it, but we don't have that yet.
And ultimately, because I sat in all those meetings, and it's really well thought out, but it's not necessarily from the perspective of the lens of the entire town. It's a good recommendation for the Parks and Rec Commission, but within the context of how we have to manage the entire community, there is some risk, but not enough to take away that flexibility. We hire someone in February, we're shut down till August. We're gonna gag on the expenses that we don't have to. So I think the exposure is small, and giving you the flexibility to work with him on it.
That's all I was looking for. Erica's in the office for the rec department, and Rich is the long term. I think it's a benefit that he's going to stay with us.
Yeah, we keep him
Yes.
longer, which is a good thing.
It didn't seem that different to me. And, you know, they have to realize that we have to have confidence in you. And to overturn what you say, there has to be a compelling reason.
I tried to tell them that twice, and I know they got some really compassionate people on there, and I honor that. But we picked up a $70,000 salary that we didn't have budgeted. So and there's no end of COVID in sight. So those two things together made it very clear to me that we need to do what we can to try to recoup some of that revenue.
Right.
Well, I think some of your smaller, some of the commissions that are passionately representing their agency forget that they're just a part of the whole. And we sit here and we have to represent the whole town, all its residents. And to spend that money on that salary when it might not be used.
Right.
It's only
Exactly.
for
The position may not be used.
it's only for 4 months. So
Yeah. Yeah, right.
really,
It's not like it's a whole year or something.
And if things change, we can do it sooner. But once we agree to do something with Rich, we got to have some stability with him. You can't just have him month to month.
Nope.
So let me just say this, you know, if this is operations and you're the COO of the town, and unless there's a change, a conflict in the vision of it, I'm not sure why. Well, I appreciate them coming, but I guess I'm not ready to overturn the decision of the town manager again, unless there is really compelling reasons.
Yeah, they wanted a chance to present. I tried to tell them. I met with them 3 times. My position didn't change. We picked up that position, which they've been trying to get us to do for 17 years. I thought that was the golden dog bone, but when Ken agreed, and I guess when Ken went back, they were still, like I said, they're very passionate, and I get it. And they were afraid that we were going to fall on hard times and not put a full-time director back in there. So I can understand that philosophy, but we clearly said that on record that that's not what we're trying to do.
And there wasn't consensus either on they weren't in 100% agreement on the approach. I mean, they got a majority, but it wasn't a consensus either. So there was clearly different opinions.
But they knew that you didn't agree with it, Peter. They knew that you supported Andy's position, or?
Well, as a liaison, I presented my position during the meeting because they're very open in allowing me to jump in. So that's my opinion, and so I presented my opinion supporting that initiative. From the perspective of the liaison. So I had talked to Ken afterwards, just saying, listen, now as the Board of Selectmen, I know this is coming before me, and I'm the liaison, but let me tell you, I just want to give you courtesy as to what I'm thinking. And he said, no, you were clear when you provided your opinion in the meeting. But I said, I appreciate what you guys decided, but I'm supporting Andy on this, just so you know. And he said, no, you made that argument. Again, they were giving me the courtesy of actually providing an opinion, which is very nice because I've served as liaisons to other boards, and I mean, those will not even be there. So it's actually refreshing that they actually wanted to hear from me. So yes, they were clear as to where I stood.
Here again, we're back to, with all the individual boards and commissions, their responsibility is, of course, their board or commission. They need to sometimes look at the situation through our eyes, because we've got the entire town that we have to balance out.
That's what I said.
We have to balance the seniors and the schools and Parks and Rec and every other entity in town, the fire department. They all are vying for their specific entity. I just wish they would sometimes look at things through our eyes so they could see what we have to try to balance.
Yeah, I don't think we're that far off. I really don't. Andy, work with them, and I think I don't see the exposure as being significant. I understand their position; they do a nice job, very passionate, engaged group. But I'm with Andy. I don't see us
And
being
their
really
numbers,
ramped
I
up.
don't want to be, I didn't want to dispute Ken's numbers, but it's a lot more of a savings than what they portrayed. It's not that close. I wouldn't even have, it's a lot further apart. Benefits are expensive. And Rich going from a full-time to a part-time, the savings on his pension and then the health insurance is a lot more than what they were suggesting. And Elaine did the numbers. I didn't want to dispute them on tape, but they did their own numbers.
They probably don't throw in all the other ancillary costs of an employee.
They use
No, it didn't
percentages,
sound
so
like
it was a best guess, and I'm not trying to criticize them. That's not what I'm doing here, but I had financial backing that disputed a little bit more what the numbers were.
Oh, well, any rate.
All right.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Yeah,
It's gonna
you
be a
too.
little
I'll make the motion to adjourn. It's 9:36.
Good work, everybody. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Gail. Second. Good night. Thank you, Andy. Great
Good night.
job. Thank you, Donna. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dory and Donna.
Thank you,
Yes.
Dory.
Good night.